There's something special about a Zelda boss, something other games just don't quite get. It's all well and good breaking demon faces as the Doomslayer or slaying gods as Kratos, but I think the real clincher that makes Zelda bosses so good is that you've got a real connection to Link. He's not this all-powerful beast, he's a kid with a sword and a buttload of courage. Man, to walk into this pitch black room and slay a gigantic spider parasite without freaking out and burning down the whole Deku Tree takes some serious balls. Zelda bosses are without a doubt one of the best things about the games. Personally, I love the dungeons, but a huge part of the excitement is wondering what's lurking at the end of them. What monsters laying in wait, be it a gargantuan fire scorpion, a leviathan of the deep, or an overweight ninja. Maybe not that last one. So out of all these amazing Zelda bosses, which ones are the best? Let's take a dive into the deepest, darkest parts of Hyrule and look at some of the most terrifying and most awesome monsters it has to offer, in my personal top 5 Zelda bosses list. As always, this is only my opinion. If you've got a different one, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. I'm also going to limit it to one boss per Zelda game, otherwise you know how much I love Wind Waker, the list would be full of Wind Waker ones. So let's get into it. Number 5. Starlord. If you've played A Link Between Worlds, I don't doubt you remember this boss. A lot of the bosses in the game are just revamped fights against the Link to the Past bosses, which don't get me wrong, are still incredibly fun. But Starlord doesn't appear to be a boss from A Link to the Past at first. He's a giant skeletal monster that uses a great sword and a shield to fight. But what's cool is he's actually the Lorulian equivalent of Blind the Thief, the boss of the Thieves Down from A Link to the Past turned corrupted monster in the Dark World. But it's not the backstory, it's the fight itself why I love Starlord. It's one of the most physically intimidating bosses in the game, who's seemingly undefeatable until you discover one of the coolest uses of the wall merge mechanic in the game, merging onto the flat surface of his shield, travelling to his exposed back and attacking. Starlord gets even cooler halfway through the fight where he realises his weakness, throws his shield aside, and goes on an all-out assault. Yeah, Starlord might not be as epic or as iconic as other bosses on this list, but he stood out to me as my favourite boss from one of my favourite Zelda games. Number 4. Starlord. Okay, you're probably expecting this one on a list of favourite bosses. Everybody loves Starlord. But I mean, look at his little face, who couldn't love it? Starlord is easily one of the most intimidating Zelda bosses. It's a skeleton of God knows what, some sort of monstrous dragon long dead at the Arbiter's grounds that was reanimated by the unholy power of Zant. Its name lets you know how serious this is, Starlord. Doesn't matter what else you reanimate, be it Stalfo, Stalnox, this is the Starlord. And it looks the part, completely dwarfing the hero with its immense stature. The Starlord boss fight is a great use of a criminally underused Twilight Princess item, the spinner. I don't know, if you can't see the appeal of taking on an ancient reanimated Dragon Lord while riding on a giant Beyblade, I think there's something wrong with you. Number 3. The Helmarok King. Alright, the Helmarok King makes my list for a few reasons. The boss design is really cool. It's got awesome music. The fight involves smacking the hell out of a legendary beast with a hammer twice your size. But the main reason I love this fight so much is that it shows just how far Link, and you, the player, have come since the start of the game. So obviously at the beginning of the game, the Helmarok King takes Link's sister, Aryll, to the Forsaken Fortress. You travel there with the help of the pirates, where you lose your sword and have to sneak through the base, hiding from and evading enemies as you climb towards the room in which your sister's being kept. Near the peak of the Forsaken Fortress you regain your sword, slay a green bokoblin guard, and storm into the prison in order to free Aryll. However, before you can do anything, the Helmarok King descends from the skies and blocks your way. Link loses this fight horrifically and is thrown into the ocean as easily as how you'd swat away a fly. Because of how helpless you feel here, the second time you reach the Forsaken Fortress, it's been made personal. You're not the helpless kid with a blunt sword from your hometown anymore, you're the hero of Winds, complete with a Master Sword and Skull Hammer, and it's time to cook the world's biggest Thanksgiving feast. As I said earlier, the fight itself is fun, but nothing too exceptional. It involves breaking the Helmarok King's eponymous mask with the hammer, then striking the exposed head beneath. The reason it's on my favourite Zelda bosses list is because of the relationship between you and the Helmarok King, and how personal this fight actually is. And it's awesome as well that after you finally end your vendetta against the Helmarok King, you come full circle and then feel just as helpless as you did at the start of the game when you confront Ganondorf, letting you know that the time of the game's secondary antagonist is over, and now all of your efforts are focused on the Gerudo King. Number 2. Monk Mazkoshia. We're really getting into it now. The only boss on this list that isn't technically evil, Monk Mazkoshia serves as the final test from the ancient Sheikah monks set before Link in Breath of the Wild. The fight starts as every shrine ends. After you beat the 5th Divine Beast, Link walks up to a large box of blue energy which is keeping a Sheikah monk in stasis. However, instead of congratulating you, this monk begins to move. First his hand starts to twitch, then he forms a fist, and then he stands up before the hero, challenging him to one final trial. And man is this fight a good one. Taking place on a Smash Bros Final Destination-like platform, floating way above Hyrule, Monk Mazkoshia channels some blue Sheikah energy before assuming a fighting stance. I don't know about you guys, but this fight definitely brought on some Mr. Miyagi old school martial arts sensei vibes. This Sheikah monk is absolutely the most difficult boss fight in the game, going through multiple phases to test the hero's strength. And beating him truly feels like the student has become the master. You've finally conquered all the challenges the Sheikah have put before you. At the end of the battle, the monk acknowledges you as a true hero, then awards you with one of the most badass Zelda items of all time, the Master Cycle 0. This fight, this immense showdown versus a true master of the Sheikah arts, is what I felt the Master Koga fight should have been. I mean, I get that the Yiga clan are supposed to be both badass ex-Sheikah ninjas, but also a bit of comic relief with their love of bananas, but sneaking through their lair was still a pretty fun experience, partially because of the build up to what was at the end, the meeting finally with their master that's been hyped up most of the game. Then you find out their leader is just this tubby fella, which is funny but disappointing. Monk Mazkoshia stands out as a real, awesome test against the might of a Sheikah master. Number 1. Ganon. This is it. No more games, no more playing around. Ganondorf has used the Triforce of Power to become something never before seen in the Zelda timeline, a beast of pure hatred and evil. Every other boss in Ocarina of Time has a little title before their name, such as Infernal Dinosaur or Parasitic Armored Arachnid, but not Ganon. He needs no introduction, he is the be-all and end-all of Zelda bosses. This fight is absolutely the most cinematic and badass in the Zelda series, even in a 20-year-old Nintendo 64 game. The battlefield is almost pitch black, the silhouette of the demon only visible when lightning etches across the skies. Yeah, you can argue that the fight itself isn't too difficult, and you'd be right, but for me at least this boss battle stands out as the best of its kind just due to the cinematic feel. It's what I think they were going for with Dark Beast Ganon in Breath of the Wild, a climactic ending against a monstrous beast, but I think they've ruined it by having the demon stay pretty much still during the entire fight, which by the way takes place in broad daylight, so you can see it for what it is, a gigantic pink sitting duck. Great. Ocarina of Time's Ganon is actually threatening. You really feel that losing this would mean truly the end of the world, making the final sword strikes to his face all the more satisfying. The 3DS version, in my opinion, spoiled this cinematic feel a little by brightening the whole area, but it's still pretty cool. I didn't want to include more than one Ganon fight, so I looked back over every single Ganon fight, including the Demise one in Skyward Sword, but for me, no Zelda boss fight can compare to the final showdown against Ganon at the climax of one of the most epic Zelda stories of all time. So there you go, there's my list of my 5 all-time favourite Zelda bosses. I've also done my 5 favourite Zelda items and Zelda dungeons, so if you fancy any more Zelda stuff, there's a link to the playlist in the card in the top right or in the description. What do you guys think? Are there any bosses you love that I missed out on when making this video? Let me know in the comments below or on Twitter @Zeltik. Cheers for watching the video, leave a like if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you want to see some more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.